floor doing some of that types of content. So here's a really interesting article called Vaccine Hesitancy in the New Global Surveillance System. And without going too deep into this, what I found the most interesting part of this article, and actually I really like this whole article, so please carefully read this, but were two avenues of the implementation of the mandated vaccine program through the Real ID Act of 2005 and the biometric passport potential that happened under the Homeland Advanced Recognition Technology System Act and program, whereby to simply get a passport or to get a driver's license or to make any type of travel that requires federal ID, which is primarily commercial aviation, you go to an airport and you have to show all these IDs and things, that as a way to outsmart or outmaneuver state law-based exemptions and exceptions for the mandated vaccines, that through some type of federal law, like Real ID programs or something like that, that will basically trump all, and excuse the pun, that was kind of funny, but will trump all existing state regulations, because if you need to use a Real ID or some type of passport or biometric passport concept that is all federally regulated, basically vaccines will now become a federal mandated thing rather than a state mandated thing, which they are now. And if you've been following the news, New York and California removed the vast majority of exemptions. And regardless of even, in some cases, medical reasons that you can't get them, they're still going to give it to you. Tony, I would imagine you had some thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty frightening, and especially when you consider that much of the Obamacare, the Healthcare Act that was passed, digitized everything, so that will add to the tracking system of what vaccines people are getting and centralizing it essentially.
Imagine if vaccines are mandated everywhere because you need a biometric passport. So everybody has to get the vaccine schedules because it's the only way to get the biometric passport that is required to travel anywhere in the U.S. I could imagine places like Kansas. They're not going to remove the religious exemption just because of culturally they're a more religious state than, say, California. But if California and New York are creating the law around biometric passport because they're in control of the federal government, you're going to be able to get rid of all the rights that people in the non-coastal cities have fought for. Now, I know a lot of people disagree. There's been this brainwashing that all vaccines are good, but the whole anti-vaxxer movement has been put in a very negative spotlight. There are serious health concerns about them, and all the anti-vaxxer movement is asking for is greater attention being paid to scientifically analyzing some of the threats that are involved with vaccines, particularly how many you get whenever you're an infant. Maybe that's not safe in terms of aluminum and formerly thimerosal, which they actually eventually admitted was bad for you and got rid of, and now we have aluminum and all these other kind of byproducts in there. Are we doing too much too soon on infants is one of the big questions. Is aluminum in the quantities that we're talking about safe for everybody? Because some people have aluminum sensitivities. It's not always religious exemptions and things. There are serious medical exemptions that need to be considered, and a federal law that mandates biometric passports would basically get away with ever being able to take advantage of those exemptions in a very sneaky way, if you know what I mean. Anybody else have anything on this topic?
Perhaps one should consider that the great communications infrastructure for all of this and the social credit aspect of all of this is your 5G. That's what's going to tie all these things together in real time. So there won't be any place to run or hide or avoid because it will be omnipresent.
I'm glad you brought that up because I actually forgot to mention that whole other half of this article was that there is a potential that what they're calling the biometric passport could be a surveillance device that's connected to 5G. That's just crazy. It could be monitoring your biometric data. And Gary, let me know if you agree, but that would then perhaps real-time update your social credit score. So are you smoking too many cigarettes? Are you frequenting places that you shouldn't be? Do you have the right political biases? All of this stuff. It could all be surveilled from within your body itself. It's almost like the next version of the RFID chip. Why implant a chip into somebody when you could just inject a whole bunch of molecule-sized technology into them?
Absolutely agree. How many of us use these affinity cards at the grocery store? A lot of us, I suspect. I do. But the fact of the matter is that that's just a test bed to keep a track of exactly what it is that you buy. So if you tie that into the health aspect of things, and you tie it in real time, if you're buying too much of one thing and not enough fruit and not enough vegetables, what is the likelihood that a smart insurance company might decide to rate you for your health insurance because you're not eating properly? These are the kinds of avenues that are opened up by this kind of technology.
And then somebody mentioned the digitization of your healthcare information under Obamacare. What better way to decline your insurance or give you much higher rates and things than having real-time monitoring of your health? And I think there is an argument that, yeah, if you're not eating properly, perhaps your health insurance should be a little bit higher. But there's also a counter argument that not everybody who eats perfectly is healthy anyway. There's always these random occurrences. You get a sudden acute disease. Even though you've done everything right, all of a sudden you get very sick and your insurance goes up. So in a weird way, this is almost effectively taking out the concept of unfortunate chance. It just seems a little weird that, okay, I have a soda once a month. That doesn't mean I'm going to get cancer. And should my social credit score then be adjusted, which is going to affect all kinds of things outside of insurance. It's going to affect your ability to travel, your ability to get loans, all kinds of stuff. It's just more data that they're taking from you, which has been the trend for decades. Now we have all this personal data from social media. Now we have all this personal genetic data from 23andMe, and then now we're going to have real-time monitoring of your health. Potentially, it's spooky. And then what if you can't get a passport? I drink too many sodas a week. I can't fly across the country. Spooky stuff. People should always be very skeptical whenever somebody's trying to capture tons and tons of data related to your personal self, whether it's your opinions that you put onto social media, whether it's your biometric data that you've now been mandated to inject yourself with. The potential for corruption and abuse of this type of data is huge. And we've seen that. Facebook does it all the time. They went to a congressional hearing because of it, because they were doing this stuff. They've been manipulating elections because of it. And I'm not even talking about Russia. I'm talking about the other actors that like to manipulate public opinion. Just a quick comment here. In the same Poisoning of the Planet vein, there was a study that found tons of toxic chemicals in most baby food. So be very careful what you buy. Do some research, organics, things that aren't processed. And also keep in mind that what might be toxic to an adult is not necessarily what would be toxic to an infant. Weaker immune systems, you have the accelerated vaccine schedules being injected at the same time that you're feeding your infant. So just be very careful with this and try to do some research. Don't just buy, the regular run-of-the-mill stuff. You shouldn't be doing that anyway. Moving on, just quick.